My father, when he was single, he worked back there, and he worked for a lot of companies. He worked for the Cadillac Company, he worked for Ford Motor Company, and he worked for all those motor companies. He was a machinist, a tool and die maker. He could make anything. I remember him once taking an iron apart, a flat iron apart, and had all this like cellophane paper in there, but I don't know what they called it, isinglass paper or something they had in there. And I remember him taking that out and getting all the wires out and putting that all back together, and the iron worked. I always was amazed at that. And I remember one time when I was working at the ballpark, they had the old-fashioned turnstiles, and you went through. And there was something wrong with the turnstiles, and Jimmy Ritchie was the maintenance man, and he couldn't find anybody that knew how to fix those turnstiles. So my father was there one day, and he called. He said, "You're a tool and die maker?" And Dad said, "Yes." He says, "Come over here. I want you to look at this." He said, "Can you do anything?" Dad says, "I can make one of those and fix it up." And he did, and the turnstiles worked. He took a part out and he made another one and then put it in, and so I thought he was pretty smart myself. My father was born in Philadelphia, and Mom was born in Hoosick Falls. You know how my father met my mother? There was 2 flats, one on the first floor and one on the second floor. And the Torpey family lived on the second floor, and the Gannons lived on the bottom floor. And one day, my grandma Torpey took my mother downstairs to see Mrs. Gannon's new baby, and it was my mother. And my father said he never had a chance in his life. So that's how he met her. Yeah. My father knew my mother his whole life, or her whole life, and my mother knew him and the Torpey family all the life. He got married in Hoosick Falls and then moved to Detroit because my dad was working there. And so he worked all out there in Detroit. And so when they got married, they moved back to Detroit. And we lived there until I was 6 years old when we left Detroit and went to Hoosick Falls. I was born in Detroit, Michigan on June 3rd, 1923. My mother told me I was born in a thunderstorm, thunder and lightning at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she was terrified because she hates thunder and lightning storms. We left when I was 6 years old, and that was the Depression, and we moved to Hoosick Falls, and we lived with my grandmother Gannon for we went to school there for about a year, maybe a little more than a year, and then my father got a job with General Electric up in Pittsfield, Mass. And then we moved up there, and we were there for up until 6th grade. I was in 6th grade, and there my dad then got a job down at the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C., and that's when we moved there. I was about 11 when we moved down there. When we first moved there, we lived in a row house. They're all connected. And my father used to say, if you want to go to the backyard, you have to go around the block. So, oh yeah, he sure did. And that's what we had to do. We didn't have a little backyard about that big, I guess, But anyway, that's where it was. We lived there for a while, and then we moved out to Connecticut Avenue in Chevy Chase. And that was where, that's not where I met Dad, but that's where we lived when we first started going together. So we lived there I lived there until I got married.